Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to the worship service of the First Unitarian Church of Hobart. My name is Barb Lango, and I participate in the life of the church by serving on the Board of Trustees, among other things. We are a religious community of people with diverse beliefs and shared values. Our diverse beliefs are expressed in our 6 sources, and our shared values are expressed in our 7 principles. Both can be found online at uua.org. Together, we strive to grow spiritually, build community, and live our values in the world. I have a couple of announcements. The Faith in Action Ministry is coordinating the Share the Harvest Drive this year. I made copies of the list of food to bring in for donations and put them on the table by the nursery. Donated bags should be placed on that table. And our Thanksgiving dinner and raffle and auction will be on Sunday, November 20th. The fundraising ministry is asking for donations for the raffle and for the like maybe homemade crafts or something, and for the auction. What? They need to bring sides. Yeah, I'm getting there. Jeez, Russ. Also, turkey and ham will be provided along with beverages. Please sign up to bring a Thanksgiving side dish. I have where the coffee is, I have a list there where you could put your name and how many are coming, and the side dish you want to bring. Okay, Pastor Tom is in the pulpit today, and we are currently streaming our services online. The joys and sorrows portion of our service, however, is private, and we will take a break from streaming at that time. The service will be recorded and will be available for future viewing on Facebook, YouTube, and the church website. Wearing masks is optional right now, but if you are ill or you think you've had contact with anyone who has COVID, please attend virtually. Now, please let your Facebook and Twitter friends know that you are attending worship with hashtag First Unitarian Hobart, and silence your devices and take a deep breath and another, and join us in a spirit of reverence.
Thank you, Jeremy. If you would, join me with lighting the chalice. We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, a sign of our quest for truth and meaning, and a celebration of a life we share together. Thank you.
For our opening words this morning, I invite you to open your hymnals to reading 444. It's a responsive reading, and I will read the regular text and invite you to join me in reading the italics. It's called This House, and it's on the bottom right-hand side. This house is for the ingathering of nature and human nature. It is a house of friendships, a haven in trouble, an open room for the encouragement of our struggle. It is a house of freedom, guarding the dignity and worth of every person. It offers a platform for the free voice, for declaring, both in times of security and danger, the full and undivided conflict of opinion. It is a house of truth-seeking, where scientists can encourage devotion to their quest, where mystics can abide in a community of searchers. It is a house of art, adorning its celebrations with melodies and handiworks. It is a house of prophecy, running times past and times present, visions of growth and progress. This house is a cradle for our dreams, the workshop of our common endeavor. And I invite you to flip to hymn 361 and rise in body or spirit and join in song. Please remain standing for our affirmation of faith.
Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament. This is its prayer, and this is our covenant. To dwell together in peace, seek truth in love, and to help one another. We are striving to create a worship space which is both spiritual and safe. However, we recognize that not everyone can attend in person. We extend a special welcome to everyone who is joining us virtually today. Thank you for our tech team. Looks like we only have one up there today. Thanks, James, for making the live streaming and recording possible. For those present in the sanctuary, please take a moment to greet your neighbor by waving your hands and letting the warmth of your smile fill the space between us.
Please be seated. Each week we have a time for the sharing of joys and sorrows, milestones, concerns. What is on your heart this morning? What are you carrying from the world outside, from the currents of your own life? What are you bringing into this space together? I will walk around the sanctuary with this microphone and give everybody an opportunity to share what those things might be for you. And if you have something to share, I invite you to rise as you're able, and I will hold up the microphone to your mouth so that we can all hear what you're saying. And please share your name with us so we know who you are. Yes.
Good morning. My name is Caitlin, and I get to share the story this morning. It's called, What is Heaven? What is Hell? Once a samurai came to his master, Hakuin, and asked, Master, tell me, is there really such a thing as heaven and hell? The master was quiet for some time while gazing at the man. Who are you? He asked at last. I am a samurai, swordsman, a member of the emperor's personal guard. You, a samurai? Said Hakuin doubtfully. What kind of emperor would have you for a guard? You look more like a beggar. What? The samurai stammered, growing red in the face and reaching for his sword. Oh, said Hakuin, so you have a sword. Do you? I bet it's much too dull to cut my head off. The samurai could no longer contain himself. He drew his sword and ready to strike the master. Hakuin responded quickly, That is hell. The samurai, understanding the truth in the master's words and the risk he had taken, sheathed his sword and bowed. Now, said the master, that is heaven. Why did the samurai raise his sword against the master? Why did he bow? One interpretation of the samurai's response is that he was letting his ego rule him. Something for us to think about. Brainstorm a list of times that you have responded to a situation with your ego. Brainstorm a list of times in which you put your ego aside and responded with your heart. How did those feel different? How were those outcomes different?
I invite you to open your teal hymnals to hymn 1030. This is one that we have done in the recent past, so it shouldn't be too distant of a memory for those of you who were here that Sunday. Rise in body or spirit. And I'll walk you through some of the pronunciation here. So there's some of the lyrics there in Zulu, and some of them are in English. And so the Zulu pronunciation is pretty simple. Siyahamba, Kukunyenkwenkos. Let's do it again. Siyahamba, Kukunyenkwenkos. Beautiful. Is that easy? seated. So, we've been doing some disentangling over the past few months, some disentangling of heavens and hells. In Unitarianism, Universalism these days, heaven and hell, we most often think in terms of what in theological circles they would call radically realized eschatology. And what that means in layman's terms is that the heavens and hells that we experience are things that we experience in this life, in this world. And there are things that can be created by people, there are things that can be dismantled by people, there are things that are something that we can have an impact on. It's not just something where we die and end up somewhere, but in our moment-to-moment existence with one another, we encounter, we create, we destroy those heavens and hells ourselves. And so the point of these past few months has been to do some disentangling, because if we're not careful, and most often we're not, I'm not, we can easily get entangled in particular habits and ways of being with ourselves and with the rest of the world. And I gained a new respect for disentangling when I got an Associate of Science in the recording arts. So at one point, before I got into ministry, kind of in between my different social justice jobs, I went to this school in Orlando, Florida, outside of Orlando, where I was in sound studios for a year, recording music and sound effects and using various processors. And at one point, we took a scene from The Matrix, and they took out all of the audio, and we had to add all the audio back in. So all of the gunshots and people falling all over the place and the dialogue, we sort of recreated it and added it back in. So there was a year of doing this sort of stuff, and I ended up with an associate's degree at the end. But the most useful thing that I still carry to this day is how to wrap a cable without it getting tangled in itself. So if you've ever taken a cable out of a stereo, maybe you're moving, maybe you're trying to put something in a different part of your home, you're upgrading to a new system, you might have had the experience of just twisting it up in a circle and putting it somewhere, and the next time you pick it up and you try to just unroll it and plug it in, you find out that's not that easy. Somehow it automatically gets tangled up in itself, and you have to find which end is and weave it through again. And so I'm very glad that I got to be, it was an expensive, it was maybe like $25,000 of tuition for that 1 year. And it's an expensive thing to learn, but it is the main thing that I still carry with me, is how to wrap those cables in a way that we're not going to get entangled. And so these past few months, we've been talking about not getting entangled in a broader sense, in a life sense, that it's inevitable that that's going to happen to some extent, but how can we weave our lives? How can we navigate ourselves in the world in a way that tends to that ongoingly, so we're not going to get tangled up like that? And a big part of it is this thing around covenant that we've been talking about. This practice of making promises to one another and having each other hold us to those promises. Outside of this, you can certainly do this with anybody in your life outside of a congregational faith community context. There's a friend of mine who I met in Seattle when I first lived there in 2004. And we worked together and we spent some time together, and we really bonded in a lot of things. And one of the things that I would share with her is my deep longing for a really powerful community to be a part of. And then when I moved back to Seattle 15 years later, and we were connecting and catching up again, and I talked about, I have this deep longing for a community to be a part of. She said, you know what? I heard you say that 15 years ago. What have you been doing about that in your life? Those people who know us well enough that they've heard us talk about what is important to us and can come back to us and say, that thing that you said that was important to you, what are you actually doing about that? Those people that we know well enough that we can come back to and say to them, those things that you told me were important to you, what have you been doing about that? How is that working out? And in the context of a UU congregation, we We can take it on not just as a casual thing with friends, but as a spiritual practice with one another, as a way of minding the course of this whole congregation. So since early August, we've been on this journey together where in the previous series, before the one that we're in right now, we did some self-exploration from how do you want to be remembered to what is most important to you to what is falling away, what brush needs to be cleared in order for new growth to occur. From what suffering have you been distracting yourself? And in what ways have you been dishonest with yourself? What tug do you feel just under the surface? We dove into some practices of prayer and meditation, focusing on things. We spent some time with resting in the fact that an individual is insufficient and that our only hope of getting through this is with each other. And we went into reckoning with realignments that we felt called to in relationship to ourselves, our relationships to one another, our relationships to the world as a whole. And then in this series, I've been inviting you to build from that foundation, to deepen your relationships with one another, clearing out whatever weeds may have started growing along the way, coming back into right relationship or initiating right relationship in the first place with each other, coming back into covenant. What is it that deserves coming back to? In many ways, covenant is the key Unitarian Universalist practice. But at its outset, it takes some unpacking because it's not like most other agreements with which we're familiar. The concept of covenant originally comes to us from our Christian ancestors. Both Unitarianism and Universalism started out as theological positions in Christianity. And in the Torah, covenants are between God and the Hebrews, and they're dictated by God to the people. But in present-day Unitarian Universalism, with our high anthropology, it's another theological term for our high opinion of humans, where we lift up the possibilities for what humans can achieve and be to one another. In this context, we also get a say in what is in a covenant. We get a voice in setting the terms. We're not a creedal religion. We don't have a creed that sets out, here is what you have to believe, and here are the core tenets of Unitarianism and Universalism. We don't have that. Sometimes people complain that we've started using the 7 principles, which were intended to be a temporary thing, as a creed, because we're so used to going into that creedal mind frame. But we're not an orthodoxic religion. We're not here about right belief. You don't need to believe anything in particular to be one of us. And we're also not an orthopraxic religion, which means right practice. There aren't particular rituals or ceremonies that are required of everybody. The primary thing that holds us together is this practice of covenant. It's not just that we get to do this whole covenant thing. It's that this is a core responsibility of ours. When we think about what it means to be Unitarian Universalist, we should come back to it meaning being a covenant-making, covenant-breaking, and covenant-remaking people. When our Unitarian ancestors focused on the great possibilities of humanity, we're not simply corrupted beings that we need to follow a narrow path, but rather that we're children of God who have been blessed with great capacities. And when our Universalist ancestors insisted on that a loving God would not damn anyone to hell for eternity, but rather in God's love for all people would invite us all into heaven together, both our Unitarian and Universalist forebears blazed a trail for a sort of human participation in the world that fully recognizes both our freedom as human beings to have a great impact on our surroundings and our responsibilities as human beings to be mindful about what we choose to do with our wild and precious life. This act of mindfully and consciously choosing with one another That is covenant. And so the first challenge to conventional thinking is that a group of people do not need to share the same set of beliefs or rituals, that they can choose together how they are to be connected. And the second Unitarian Universalist challenge to conventional thinking and the practice of covenant occurs because we are used to thinking of things as fixed. The U.S. Constitution has been amended over the years, but the same basic structure is in place. And our entire legal system is set up to nail down a particular approach to an issue and, for the most part, stick with that approach. And similarly, in the natural sciences, there's this ongoing process of nailing down more and more things that we know that we can treat as fixed points of knowledge. But the practice of coming back into covenant does not involve these sort of fixities. Last week, we did a covenanting with our new office administrator. And the covenant to which I invited everyone to respond, "I will," was not something that you had ever seen before that moment. Did it give you pause to agree to these things? Did you think about the content of what you were agreeing to? Did you get a chance to mull it over and see if you agreed with it? No, because that wasn't the most important part. The most important part is having the initial framework that we can go back to and change and hack up and turn into something else as we go along in this journey together. In our society, we're so used to relating to things that are fairly static. Contracts or creeds or doctrines or laws, the results of scientific studies about the way reality works. While each of those can be changed, new scientific studies can be conducted or new laws written or contracts revised or creeds or doctrines updated. It sure is an extensive process to get to those revisions because they're all about fixing things in place. Each of those is supposed to work like a carefully crafted instrument that's been molded as precisely as possible to achieve a proper result. And while they can be updated, any updates are aimed at making them more carefully and finely crafted. And that is just not the UU way of doing things. We do not aim to have the perfectly finely honed religion. We are a covenantal faith. And what that means is that things are always open to revision, and that revising process itself is ultimately more important than the thing that is getting updated. Whereas if a law has a problem with it, there might be need to change, to make a battle, to fight something in the public square to get it updated. If a covenant isn't fitting you like a glove, if it isn't supporting you in showing up in the world the way that you are called to show up, or facilitating deeper relationships and trust and love among us, if it isn't bringing more wholeness into the world, if it's not doing those things, we should be able to easily just come back to it and revise it. It's not something for us to take a deep breath and suffer through. If we're suffering through it, that shows that it's not fitting us well. UUism isn't about aiming for that perfectly crafted instrument that we use to achieve some end. It's about an ongoing tailoring of the outfit so that it continues to feel like it fits well, like it supports us in this particular stage of our life. It's less like passing a law or establishing a scientific theory and more like a Tibetan Buddhist sand mandala. Who here has seen sand mandalas before? A couple of you. So there's this I was introduced to them in this documentary called Samsara, where they just show you, no commentary, just some footage of somebody making a sand mandala. And it's this very intricate design, and then destroying it when it's over. And then creating a new one, and then destroying it when it's over. So we've got a brief video for those of you who haven't seen before of that process of working with sand mandalas. just so you get a visual of what it is that I'm talking about here. So you get a sense of how finely crafted these mandalas are.
I almost felt like I was listening to crickets, kind of meditative and prayerful.
They have been working on this sand painting for 6 days. So they put a lot of hard work and effort.
And the rest of the geometry, so you know how they had all the shapes?
All the color pattern and design, they have to memorize. We are doing everything according to the scriptures.
When I walked into work, I saw them setting up. I took a few pictures each day. I saw the center be created.
But at the end, it will be destroyed and dismantled. To symbolize the impermanence of all the phenomena.
There's a beginning and an end.
That nothing lasts forever.
And there's no attachment to the actual thing. Kind of like when we moved from one home to the other, right? What happened? We had a wonderful time in the old place, and now we moved, and we started a new place, right?
I don't feel too sad, just a little.
And you step back and you move on. That's just life.
So if you weren't able to make out some of the details there was this little spout that they were pouring the sand from, the colored sand, very gradually. And they spent 6 full days creating this design. A bunch of them hunched around this table, 6 full days creating this super intricate design. And at the end of the 6 days, they just used some brushes to wipe up the pieces of sand and put them back in a container. This time not separated out by color, but all just swarmed in together. And in this context, it's a meditation on impermanence, a meditation on the temporariness of things. While many are familiar with the Jewish holiday of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, they are part of a longer arc that begins with Tisha B'Av in early August and runs through Sukkot in October. And Tisha B'Av commemorates the destruction of the temples in Jerusalem. It's a day of mourning that kicks off weeks of self-examination and reflection. Through Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, where Jews engage in prayer and apology and forgiveness and reconciliation. And then Sukkot comes along in a blaze of joy. As Rabbi Alou, who I've been quoting throughout these 2 series, wrote, "While we rejoice at Passover, it is not a full joy, because the spring seedlings are just beginning to come up, just beginning to break the plane of the earth, just beginning to show themselves in the world. And we don't know if they will make it to harvest or not. We rejoice at Shavuot, but it is only the early harvest, the time of the first fruits. And although there is a special joy in this, there is also anxiety. The full harvest won't be until fall, until Sukkot. But at Sukkot, there is no anxiety. There is nothing to hold back. There is only rejoicing. The full harvest has come. For Sukkot, a tent is set up outside with no roof. There is a structure there, but it is open to the elements. It is there to be used, but it is not a fixed, conventional house. It's a sort of provisional house that is open to the sky so that the stars might shine down on our heads. And its openness is connected to that joy. Once again, Rabbi Lou, perhaps this special joy is precisely the joy of being stripped naked, the joy of being flush with life, the joy of having nothing between our skin and the wind and the starlight, nothing between us and the world. And it exposes the idea of a house as an illusion. The idea of a house that gives security, shelter, haven from the storm. But no house can really offer us this. No building of wood and stone can ever afford us protection from the disorder that is always lurking around us. No shell we put between us and the world can ever really keep us secure from it. But the joy connected to this holiday isn't the same as simple happiness. As Lou writes, when we speak of joy here, we are not speaking of fun. Joy is a deep release of the soul, and it includes death and pain. Joy is any feeling fully felt, any experience we give our whole being to. We are conditioned to choose pleasure and to reject pain, but the truth is, any moment of our life fully inhabited, any feeling fully felt, any immersion in the full depth of life can be the source of deep joy. So this practice of covenant, of coming back to what is it that is going to fit like a glove, can keep us in tune with that. It's the joy of breathing in and out with life, of not needing to shore up oneself or build an edifice that we can hide behind, or the claustrophobia that can set in when we start viewing other people as fixed beings, like, oh, Sally is just like this, or Jason is just like that, or I know who Consuelo is, or even a fixed understanding of ourselves. It's the joy of getting to relax our grip on all of that, letting it wash away, and getting to start fresh once again from a place of wakefulness, coming to things fresh, and recognizing that too is temporary. In Rabbi Lou's words, we will inevitably sleep again. We will drift back into our house or one remarkably like it without even realizing that we have, and it makes no difference that there will once again be walls between us and the rest of the world. In our UU context with our practice of covenant, we have a framework for calling one another back into wakefulness. A framework for calling one another back into wakefulness. Of being the best kind of friend to one another. The kind who supports you in being the version of yourself that you've said you want to be. That takes a stand for your self-professed dignity and worth. The kind who you are when you do that for others. Of having a touchstone to which we can refer back in our lives, reminding us of what we strive for, helping us to move ever closer to that best self. It is the possibility of engaging in life, recognizing that we find heavens and hells on a daily basis, but the more mindful and conscious we become of them, and the better we support each other in navigating them, the more our grip on that fixedness can be loosened. The more we can trust one another and trust ourselves to take risks and to grow and to plant the seeds for future harvests of possibility. And so my suggestion to you, my invitation, my homework to you over this coming week is to practice making some promises to one another. What promise might be a bit of a stretch for you that maybe you could use some support in making? And maybe it's your sort of classic New Year's, like, I'd like to exercise more, or I'd like to eat better, or something like that. Or maybe it's something that's a little bit more like, I would like to feel more of a sense of peace in myself. Whatever your promise that you might make to somebody that they can check in with you about next week. How is that going? How is that playing out for you? So that they can see that desire in you and support you in moving toward it, and you can do the same for them. This can be a house of friendships, a haven in trouble, a home for the encouragement in our struggle. It can be a house in which you guard the dignity and worth of one another, and in which others also guard your dignity and worth. It can be a house of truth-seeking in which we devote ourselves to our quest together. It can be a house of prophecy in which we lean into visions of growth and progress. It can be a cradle for our dreams, the workshop of our common endeavors, in which our ears are open to the songs there to hear, and our hearts are open, and we aren't afraid of those sands being changed. And we can trust that when we show up for each other, we are marching in the light of God. We are concertedly planting the seeds of the future and together tending their growth of our highest aspirations, so that the fields of promise might become fields of reality in this dance of life with the stars shining on our heads. And may it ever be so.
Thank you, Pastor. Now is a time in our service for our offering. We give to remind ourselves of how many gifts we have to offer. We give to remember that we are part of something bigger than ourselves. We give because we believe in music and friendship. We give it with the faith that together we have enough. The money in the baskets goes to sustaining the mission of our community. The money in the cups goes to our Faith in Action ministry and a different charity chosen by the ministry every month. This month, the money from the cups goes to the Family Giving Project. It would be the last Sunday for that, and then we'll start a new charity next month. For those not with us here today, there's an online link on the screen for both one-time and regular donations. For your prayers, your presence, your service, and your gifts, we are truly grateful. And now please rise as you're willing and able and join in singing the closing hymn, 1059, in the blue hymnal.
I'll play this once through for the melody, and then we will sing it through 3 times together in unison.
And now, may we have faith in life to do wise planting, that the generations to come may reap even more abundantly than we. May we be bold in bringing to fruition the golden dreams of human kinship and justice. This we ask, that the fields of promise become fields of reality.
We extinguish his flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, the heart of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.